This is the Athlete and Artist Show presented by BSGG. Thank you guys so much for continuing to support the podcast. If you could please subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Athlete and Artist Show. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you and enjoy the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Athlete and Artist Show. My name is Kyle Forch. I am joined by my co-host, professional hockey player Zach Boychuk, and we are back today with an incredible guest. He is a former professional hockey player. He is now a keynote speaker advocating and educating people on mental health, substance abuse, and trauma. He's the founder of Puck Support. He's a skills coach out in Muskoka, Ontario, and he is the host of the Hockey to Hell and Back podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brady Leavold. How are you, man? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me. Hopefully the connection holds up out here in the bush in Muskoka.
Hey, fix it in post, right? That's the beauty about non-live events.
Yeah, amen to that. I do everything live most of the time. You got to roll with the punches sometimes it doesn't. But I'm super grateful to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I'm grateful you're here too. I remember I read about your story in the Sportsnet article a couple years ago, and it really hit home to me because, one you had mentioned in the past, sexual abuse as a young kid, and me when I was around 5, I had a babysitter attempt to assault me, and then in terms of the addiction, I lost my dad about 4 years ago next month to an overdose, and then a few years before that, my cousin she overdosed, passed away, and now just a month ago, my mom passed away, and I found out that she was struggling with alcohol more, like worse than I had ever imagined in the last few years. So I wanted to get you on the pod and tell your story again to maybe some of our listeners that haven't heard it. And it's also, we're recording this during draft week, so we have a lot of young kids that are going into the pros and making their way through their careers. So hopefully they'll get some value out of this and learn from your experiences and hopefully help some people out.
Hey, man, thanks. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and to everybody. That's vulnerability right there, and that a lot of people at the end of the day, I think we've all lost somebody close to us to overdose at this point in time. That's certainly been the case for me, and we need to have these conversations. And I think maybe tonight we should dedicate this episode to your mom. It's the reality at any given time. People are struggling, and we know nothing about it because for so long there's been such a stigma. And if you talk about addiction, there's still a great stigma. We're doing a really good job against mental health. I don't think a lot of people understand it completely. I know I don't by any means. But you mentioned the word addiction, and it's sort of just this black cloud still. And that is something that I realized early on when I started to share my story. I have this Instagram handle, Mental Health Hockey, that I created really early on because I was essentially nobody. I was trying to get a catchy Instagram name, and now I can't even change it because there's whatever. But I there was a major gap in mental health, but I understood clearly that there was an even bigger gap with addiction. So I really wanted to press home how real that is, and how many lives have been lost, how many families it's destroyed, and how that there's so much more to it than people have ever understood. I think we always I did growing up, I never wanted to be a drug addict, right? I never wanted to be sexually abused. I had no idea that because of some of the things that happened to me would leave me predisposed to addiction. I didn't know. I wasn't educated on that. So when I started drinking and then eventually started doing drugs, which was so against everything that I stood for the longest time. I was that guy that was never going to do drugs, never, I was a hockey player. We don't do drugs. Yeah, I drank because it was sort of part of the culture, and I really wanted to fit in with the older guys. So I drank, but I would drink to black. The thing is I wouldn't even really black, but I would just drink until it was all gone. And I'd always be that last guy, trying to keep everyone partying. And so I think looking back, I realized that had those issues early on, but I knew that my life would have turned out that way. And, never could have imagined. I've lost so many people I care deeply about. One of my best friends just passed away, last month. And, he was clean for 2.5 years and made one bad decision, and now he's gone. And that's the reality of what we're dealing with. And it can happen to absolutely anybody. I've seen it affect all demographics, right? From NHL players down to police officers and police officers' kids and firefighters' kids and lawyers and doctors and homeless people. I mean, it's not discriminating at all. And I just think that these conversations need to be had, and people need to be educated. Kids need to be educated about sort of the choices they're going to be forced to make and some of the dangers that can come from it. Like, I could tell you, stories of hockey players where, two brothers, Nick and Jack Savage, they went to a party together and one night tried something for the first time, and it ended up having oxycodone in it, and they'd mixed it with alcohol. And the next morning, their parents found both of them passed away by overdose down in the United States. So mom now has written a book and is traveling around. Like, it's just one of the most tragic stories. So like, it's not just about long drawn out addictions. Like, I was in addiction for 13 to 14 years and very luckily got out of it. I overdosed more times than I can count, and I'm not even kidding. Like, the stories are just insane. I can't even begin to describe to you the life I was living, really. Um, but sometimes it's just one choice. And how many kids go to parties and for whatever reason, whether they're drinking and their inhibitions get lowered or whatever, they decide, yeah, I'm going to try something for the first time. I mean, can kill you the first time you take it, or it can end in, a long period of addiction, often ends in overdose or just pure hell. Like, and I just don't think kids really understand. And that was the case for me. And so I know I'm talking a lot here, but I'm really passionate about it, especially this stuff, because I've seen what it's done to my life and to the lives of so many others. And I just don't think we're doing enough as a society, as people, educating and also supporting each other when we're going through our struggles and addiction. Like, every time almost for me that I've seen and is my story, is it comes back to trauma. Like, there's a reason why these people, me in this instance, was using drugs. I was just trying to make myself feel better. I was in such immense pain that I was looking for an escape. And for a long time, guys, hockey was that for me. It was out in my driveway, stick handling, like, that was my freedom. And then as I got older and introduced and peer pressured and put in situations and trying to impress girls or whatever, like, I'm not making excuses. It's just where I was at 18 years old when I started to make those decisions, thinking I'm invincible. Whatever, I'll never be an addict. It's just as fun, you know? But yeah, I never thought I would end up in jail for 3 years, homeless on the worst street in Canada, no doubt, in Vancouver, Hastings. Like, we could get into all of that, but again, like, why I'm here, why I started to share my story was never to be like, oh, to get praise because I'm, over 3 years into my recovery, or because I'm being vulnerable. It was like, no, I feel like I have a deep responsibility because I'm so lucky that I made it out alive with everything that I went through and the choices that I made and the suicide attempts and the overdoses and everything. And now that I'm here, where I never thought I could be in recovery, I feel a deep responsibility to share my story in hopes of helping other people. Like, that's what it's been for the last 3 years, and that's what it will continue to be, for as long as I'm breathing. Like, it's been my life, is trying to just educate people and support those that need it when I can. And yeah, I don't know. It's been interesting for sure, guys.
Yeah, man. And I think it's super um admirable and inspiring what you're deciding to do with, your experience, and you're one of the ones that right now has been able to get out and turn their lives around for, the complete opposite. I see everything you're doing now, and it looks like you're doing really great things, not even just with in terms of mental health and addiction, but everything, coaching, your clothing line, everything. And you kind of hit it on the head. You're super lucky to be able to get out, because especially nowadays, like with fentanyl and everything, you never know what's in anything you take. Like it could be Coke, or it could be M, or whatever. Like it could be something that it could be an innocent, what you think might be just an innocent, party drug, and all of a sudden it's laced with fentanyl, and all of a sudden, that's it. So,
Yeah,
and I agree with you in terms of that we're not doing enough as a society to really help people, or at least educate or open people's eyes to the risks and the ways that there are able to turn your lives around if you are, in that situation.
yeah, and like it's no joke, right? Like getting out of that, getting out of addiction, as you know, I mean, it's the hardest thing that I ever had to do. But it is so important to be able to show others that they can do it too. Because when you're feeling that hopelessness and you feel like nobody could possibly understand you, could understand your pain, and you're able to connect with somebody or to somebody's story and be like, you know what? Like, if he can do it, if she can do it, like, so can I, right? I'm no different. Like, and it makes it tangible. And as much as social media can be a detriment to mental health, it also does have a great upside of, being able to do certain things like post videos and to connect with people across the world. And I never pretend to think that it trades places with the real human connection. There's nothing better than being in the presence of people and having that connection right there. But there is a lot of good that has come of that, and there's been a lot of people that have inspired me and shown me the way. We talk about guys like Sheldon Kennedy and Theo Fleury and Knuckles Nyland, and guys too that have all been very kind to me when I was ready to share my story. And maybe at the top of that list would be Darren McCarty, who was one of my idols as a kid and has become like a big brother to me. But they showed me that there was a way, and that it could be done. And it's pretty. I always identified as a hockey player, but I'm so aware now, especially you can imagine over after doing this for a few years. It's just incredible to know how many hockey players are either struggling or in recovery, right? A lot of them are on the DL, right? And and some are very vocal about it as well. Um, but yeah, and it's just why aren't we talking about this stuff? Like, I grew up and it was maybe like a few days in 1 week of the entire school year that we'd talk about this, and then that was it. And we were kind of left to our own devices. And parents, I believe, for the vast majority, they didn't really know how to talk about it with their kids. If we talk about it, we're going to create it. They're going to try it. Like, we were just not going to talk about it. I feel like that was, the majority of the philosophy going on. And I think there's some old thinking like that still going on, right? I travel around to schools and do different things and talk to students, and there's been like a lot of pushback, right, from principals. They don't know if they want their students to hear the raw details and the reality of what can happen. And then again, there's a lot of them that do, and they understand the value that it brings. And I'm not the only one doing it. I mean, there's a lot of other people that kind of receive that same sort of pushback, where they think they're playing it safe by not bringing it into their schools, but they're really, I think, failing in a leadership position by not giving the tools and bringing in people with real life experience and sharing these stories and being open and being honest. And like, there's a lot of kids that I know that I went to school with now who had parents who were drug addicts. I find out all these years later. Well, I was going to school with them. Like, you just don't know what anyone's going through. And I think by opening up these conversations really has the power to change lives. And, you know, it always comes back to mental health and trauma when we talk addiction. But yeah, I mean, I could talk about this stuff all night. I want to say thank you for mentioning the kind comments earlier with the clothing line. Again, was never something that I ever wanted to do. I just didn't know what else to do with the limited money that I had. Um, I don't know. I tell a pretty cool story actually, if you guys want to hear it. I don't know if you've heard this story, but I was about 6 months into my recovery, and man, I look like absolute hell. I look at those videos, I'm like, good for you, man. Like, because you look like shit. Like, you look so bad. And you just went out there and you just gave her. Like, I feel like it wasn't even me. Like, I watched the videos. I'm like, good for you, Brady. You know, like it just is this wild to watch. So, you know, I started there, and I, you know, I was literally on welfare, right? Like, I had no keys. I lost them playing hockey, but then my fake ones broke and I didn't have any money, and I was on welfare, and I didn't know what to do. But Doug Gilmore's older brother, actually, Dave, he on his 70th birthday a couple years ago, he wanted to raise some money for me. I had the idea of puck support, right? I wanted to start this organization to really help hockey players specifically who are struggling with mental health and addiction issues. And that was the idea. But like, it was a pipe dream. I was calling lawyers and they're like, it's going to be $10,000 to start a charity. And I'm like, $10,000. I only have $10 right now. Like, I don't know what you want from me. Right. And so anyways, Dave and his son, Brandon, who fights MMA, they decided that they were going to run 20 kilometers and ride their bikes 50 kilometers on Dave's 70th birthday. So Dave played in the World Hockey Association, was like a, you know, junior legend, but like 10 years older than his brother, Doug, right? And had some addiction issues and was a jail guard of all things. Like, Doug Gilmore's whole family were jail guards, other than Doug, of course. He played in the NHL, Hockey Hall of Fame. And and so they did this little fundraiser in Kingston, and they raised like, it was like $3,000 or something like that. And he's like, Brady, I know it's not enough to start the charity and that, but I want you to have it. You can do whatever you want with it. And I mean, it was a big deal because when I was in addiction, I mean, it was a real piece of shit. Like, you know, I took and took and took from everybody. I was on autopilot. It wasn't me. Again, not making excuses, but until you've lived it and you've been, especially to opiates that are so physical, right? And it just is such a desperate, there's nothing you won't do to get them when you get to a certain point. So I mean, I was just in a different place. I was 6 months in recovery, and he sent me, incredible that they did this. He sent me the $3,000, and I was like, what am I going to do with this money? Like, I was kind of freaking out because I was like, this is a big deal. Like, 6 months in recovery, you know, he raised this money. This is a really super kind gesture. Like, stand up. Like, this is incredible, right? I got to do something. I was like, maybe I'll get like a video made, you know, about honoring about the hockey players that have passed away to suicide or overdose, which I started to uncover one after the other. And sadly, as we're talking today, I'm aware of 103 hockey players that I know of, ranging from 14-year-old girl hockey players up to NHL. You know, we if you played hockey, you're in that database, and the vast majority of them were young men who played junior or some sort of pro hockey. Very, very sad, but I really wanted to do something in their honor. But I was like, if I spend the money on this video, then what? Like, where will I be? It's just an idea. Yeah, this video, it's really nice that we're paying tribute, but what, like, what's the action, right? We need some action here. So I was like thinking, I was like, well, maybe I can start a clothing line. I didn't really know, and I still have no idea what I'm doing. But I thought that, I don't know, maybe I can create a positive message that can, you know, somehow carry on the message, like, wherever it is, type deal, right? Without me having to be there, without whatever, it'll just spark up conversations. And in doing that, we can honor those hockey players. We put a name of a hockey player in all of our stuff. And I don't know if you played with Clay Plume in Lethbridge at all. I think he was older than you, but um Zach, but he passed away of a fentanyl overdose in 2021. He was a Lethbridge Hurricane. But we put a name of a hockey player in all of our apparel, and that was kind of, my way of, or our way now of kind of honoring them. But having slogans like this one says like hashtag end overdose with the puck support logo, and mental health over hockey. And I get messages all the time, where a hockey parent will message me especially, and they'll be like, Brady, I was at the rink tonight, and instead of bitching about our kids' ice time, me and the other dad, because I was wearing a mental health over hockey shirt, and he's like, what does that say, mental health over hockey? Guess what? I found out he was bipolar, and his son has ADD, and his, mom's an alcoholic, whatever it is. The stories start to come out, and instead of them bitching about their kids' ice time, now these two adults are having this vulnerable conversation that would have never happened before. And so those are the messages where it's like, wow, like that's what it's all about right there. And it's again, and why that's so powerful is because it comes back to people helping people. We as people just have to show up for one another better, and feel safe and vulnerable, and have that space to talk, right? Like it's easy to say that. It's a whole other thing to do it. And I think we as people also need to be trained, maybe not trained is the right word, but educated on how to be better friends, how to be better, teammates when it comes to dealing with some of this stuff. And I think I don't know, it's a big thing to take on, if you will. But I just think that at the end of the day, we need to be better. And yeah, but thank you for saying that, and go around and speak. And the coaching stuff, it to me is just probably one of the greatest gifts of my recovery, is being back on the ice. I didn't skate for 10 years. I resented hockey so much, or I thought I did, and I couldn't even watch it. I couldn't follow it. I was so bitter, and I made that decision early on in my recovery to put my skates on. And actually, the Swift Current Broncos sent me a pair of skates because, again, I was on welfare. I had no money. There was no buying skates. And they sent me a pair of skates, and they're like, hey, get back on the ice. Forget about your old life. And I was fresh out of jail, and put my skates on, and just found so much immense joy. And really, it was the first time that I put my skates on that I could remember. Obviously, it had been 10 years or close to 9 anyways. It's the first time that I can remember having my skates on where it was not about the pursuit of professional hockey. It was like, I have my skates on because I just love it. Like, I'm not playing hockey more. There's no pressure. I have them on because I made the choice to put them on today, and I'm enjoying this moment, and I want to do more of this. And that was a big pivotal moment in my recovery, because it was a way for me to start forgiving myself for a lot of the decisions that I made and the mistakes that I made. And to think that I would ever be in a position where I could coach, you know, after being in jail and everything, and my story being very public, and me talking about it because I figured it was already in the news anyways. I might as well address it and tell the truth, right? Like, that's where I was at with it. But to think that I would ever get an opportunity to coach, I mean, I'm on the ice with NHL players, some of the best in the world, that have cottages here in Muskoka. And I got an email the other day, I'll just say, with a schedule for the summer, and I'm looking in this email list. My name's in there, and I'm just looking at the names, and I'm telling you, like, the name you can imagine, and just imagine the names that were in that email list. Anyone who's in anyone, like the best of the best. And I just had this moment of reflection where it was like a couple things hit me where it was like, wow, you know, I remember just wanting, like, I'd given up. I was so done. And the thought of ever being even on skates again, let alone a part of the hockey community again, was like a pipe dream. Like, I can't even tell you. And, I've had some people open the doors, shout out Sam Gagne, number one. Like, that guy has become a very good friend to me, and gave me an opportunity last summer to come out and kind of, run a couple skates for the guys at the tail end of summer. And he invited me out to one, and he let me do my thing, and then called me after. He's like, "Hey, the guys loved you." He's like, "How'd you like to come back every day till we leave?" And I was like, "All right." I was like, "That's pretty awesome." And then carry on this summer. Now we're not just doing pro skates. We have hockey camps for all ages. Adam Oates is coming up. Adam Nicholas is coming. So, just to, I'm gonna be on the ice with those guys, just whatever, pushing pucks. But to be there and to be involved and to be, given that opportunity is something that I do not take lightly. And that's why I'm so grateful to the game of hockey and the people in it. To think that I resented it, and I was like, no, I was just mad at myself and had a lot of trauma that I was looking to blame anybody and just trying to ignore the fact that I was sexually abused and not address that, and ignore the fact that my mom left, and not address that, and just sort of blame anything else, and finally just getting to the root of it, and taking ownership where I needed to take ownership, and then addressing my trauma, and realizing a lot of the stuff, all the stuff in my childhood wasn't my fault, and that impacted my life moving forward. But yeah, like, it just, again, like, super 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 grateful and learning every single day more now, and I'm so keen to learn. But I hated reading. I thought learning was a waste of time. School. Let me play hockey. But I even think about going to the rink. I just wasn't really even open to learning so much as a hockey player back when I was younger, right? I don't know. And now I'm just so eager to learn in all these different aspects of my life. And as we get older, and certainly coming out of addiction, it's nice to be able to find out who I am. Like, what are my interests? I'm not just a hockey player, but what else do I like, right? What else lights my fire? And I think that's an important question we have to ask ourselves, right? Because when life has purpose, right? When you have a purpose, and you're driven, like we all should be, that's what we should strive to have. Like, there should be great purpose and meaning in our life. Like, that to me is the meaning of life. I always used to say, like, what is the meaning of life? And somebody said to me, my buddy goes, the meaning of life is to give life meaning. And I'm like, all right, like, I like that one. You put me right in my place. I've been saying it for years. I'm like, what is, like, and he said that to me, and I was like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you're right. And and for me, that's really finding a purpose. And yeah, just curious if you guys have been more open to learning and stuff like that as you get older, because it's been fun, like, getting to know and learn. I can't, I feel kind of like a geek. I think that's the wrong word, but I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm reading books and listening to, like, I got a Headway app that reads me books in, like, a 4-hour book in like 15 minutes, and it's just all the highlights, and I'm going through, and it's just, I just want knowledge. I just want to obtain knowledge. And I don't know. I just have a long ways to go, but it makes life interesting, right? I don't know.
Sure. It's passion, man. I mean, about what you're doing, about learning, about anything. Like, it just sounds like you have like a spark now where you're just passionate about not only about what you're doing, but about life in general. And I think that's huge. I kind of just wanted to rewind a little bit to back to when you had started playing juniors, Brady, because you and Zach both played in the same league, in the Western Hockey League. Um, I want to know kind of when. I know you said you had started with drinking, and you were kind of that guy that encouraged the party, encouraged people to start drinking. When was it that you went from no, I don't want to try that, no, I don't want to try that, to trying your first recreational drug, um, that wasn't alcohol, and kind of how
Yeah.
that go from there? Like, what was?
Yeah, I think that's a really important story, because I think this is, obviously, my story is different, but a lot of the times this is how it starts, right? I was at a music festival. It was just after high school graduation, and we were in Merritt, BC, huge country music festival. 4 or 5 day long party. I got a flat full of Budweiser and ready to go, right? But no drugs, like no drugs, just beer. And I remember getting there on the first night, getting right into it right away. And within a couple hours, couple guys, they got some pills in their hand. And they're like, hey man, you want to try this? And it was ecstasy or MDMA, as more referred to now. And I was like instantly like, no. Like that was the first time I ever saw it. And I was like, no. I was so turned off by it. But at the same time, I also looked up to a couple of these guys, like all of them, but two of them in particular. They were older, they were hockey players, and I was surprised, really, right? Because at that point, I friends who had done it in high school, but those were the ones that had quit hockey and started veering off this other path, and they weren't really in that clique anymore. But now all of a sudden, I'm at this music festival, and these two like older hockey players are like really good. They're like, hey, you want to try this? And I was like, so like confused at first. I was like, what? Like we're doing this? Like no, but like I'm not. Like never. Like I don't do that. And so I was there, 5 days or whatever it was. I don't know what it was on the third or fourth day. And that continued, right? Like it wasn't just them now. It was like everybody that I was around seemed to be doing it. And like every day it looked to me like they were having one hell of a time. They looked like they were having fun. And I was like, if they can handle it, like maybe I can handle it. But they asked me every day, but I still was like, no, 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 no. But on that fourth day or whatever it was, they asked me again. And it was a little bit of like, come on, man, it's not that bad. Don't be a pussy. I don't know if we're allowed to say that in 2023, but this is what they were saying. Like, like
You can still say pussy.
all the yeah, you're right. Like I don't know, man. Like I'm all for like I don't really give a shit to be honest. It just I just more make light of it. But like it was tough. It was like it was a really tough situation looking back at it. I really broke a boundary for myself that I never thought I would, right? Like I was never gonna do that. In high school, I would have been the last guy people would think to start doing drugs,
Yeah.
right? I was the athlete. I was, sure I had some problems and you know, whatever, but nothing compared. There was people doing drugs in our high school like crazy. Lost a lot of my friends to that side of, lost friendship in high school because they started doing that. And I didn't, like I said earlier. And that night, for whatever reason, why I think this is so important is because I was drunk and my inhibitions were lowered. And I was, that's a really important point. And then, like, who you're around, like, who you spend your time with and your surroundings, like, you do become that over time. Even you play hockey on a team long enough, and there's always different lingos on every team. And it seems like everybody picks it up, and there's little things. And it's just like, if you're around it, you sort of just like become it almost in a way. And yeah, in that short period of time, I made a really bad decision to try it and instantly loved it. I can't even lie. I really liked the way that it made me feel. Looking back, I now realize that I had a lot of anxiety and depression and OCD and different things where my mind was working a million miles a minute and just going through a lot. And when I found that initially, it just made me feel kind of happy. And I didn't really care what it was. I just felt relief for the first time in my life. It felt like, which is really dangerous because when you feel that and you understand, then you start to understand what it does to your brain with the dopamine and how that actually works in your brain systems and what a trick that is, what a trick TikTok and all the social medias are too, as well, to hit on those dopamine parts of our brain, which is the reward system, and it really lifts you up. It's not that I was a bad guy. That's why I liked it. It's because there were certain parts of my brain that weren't really firing properly or whatever. And now all of a sudden you get hit with that, and it's this euphoric joy feeling almost. And so you naturally you want to get more of it. And I had a really hard time after trying it one time. It was it was like on, like give me as much as I just felt like I couldn't stop.
Have you ever dreamt about calling the shots in the betting world? Well, welcome to BSGG, where you can bet, swap, and play. BSGG is the first of its kind Web3 blockchain based decentralized betting exchange. Here you have the power to be the bookie and set your own odds. Say goodbye to hidden fees, long waiting times, and the uncertainties of traditional betting platforms. With BSGG, it's a peer-to-peer experience, eliminating the need for any third party. Experience a betting platform like no other, where every stake is transparent and you can see exactly how your odds are calculated. This is the future of betting, where you hold the reins. But hold on, we are not done yet. Brace yourselves for BSGG's version 2.0, the massive upgrade to the platform. This enhancement brings the thrill of betting even to those without crypto knowledge, with the simple use of a credit card, bank transfer, or crypto deposit. And for the first time ever, an online casino with live dealers and plenty of slots right at your fingertips. The new upgrade simplifies the betting experience, allowing those with no crypto knowledge to jump right into the action in seconds. Join us today at bs.gg. Be the bookie, set your own odds, and experience betting like never before. How old were you?
And so I was 8 for my 18th birthday. So it was right after my 17-year-old season
Okay.
current. And like, yeah, like I won rookie of the year for the Swift Current Broncos that year. And I just remember being, drunk in Swift Current for 3 or 4 days at the end of the year because we didn't make playoffs. And that just basically carried on into going home, because now I had one class in high school. And so I went home from Swift Current and just started drinking like crazy. And so that kind of led up to that music festival where I was already on this sort of downhill spiral, but I still never thought that I would ever make that decision to do that. And then shortly thereafter, I ended up quitting Swift Current after playing like 7 games as an 18-year-old. I just packed up my truck and drove home because I had a complete mental breakdown. You can imagine what drinking and doing a ton of ecstasy would do to you all summer long, and then moving away home. Plus, you have already, compound mental health issues going on that you're trying to hide from everybody. And the year before, I had taken some time off, and this is 2004, right? And I went home for a week, and man, I came back to Swift Current. My gear was taped up. They had done every horrible thing you could think of. They, they were started calling me baby. They're like, you should just quit, go home, baby. Like to them, I turned my back on them because they were my teammates, and maybe they were mad because they thought I had to go home, and like I shouldn't have gone home, but they had no idea what I was really going through. And rightfully so, because I wasn't telling anybody, right? So I couldn't expect my coaches or the doctors or the team psychologists really that they brought in to do anything, because I wasn't willing to talk, because I felt like if I talk, I'm going to get made fun of even more. Or if I tell this team psychologist that I really just want to, at night, last night I took a whole bottle of Advil, and called my dad and told him like my dad had to call the coach and they send an ambulance, and oh, it's just a nightmare, looking for me too at different times, going MIA in Swift Current. Like I really, really fell apart, and I just don't think anybody understood it. And a lot of the onus was on me. Given now, I think people would be able to recognize more signs and maybe be more inclined to talk about it, and we would do better with it. But back then, I mean, it was just a nightmare, and I got treated like absolute garbage in Swift Current as a young guy, especially because I was struggling with being homesick and all the stuff. And then, yeah, so I don't know, man. But the music festival, that's where the rails fell off for me.
Do you think the culture's getting better, or do you think it will ever get better? Like I remember maybe a few years after that, like what you're talking, the whole like Akima Lu thing was coming out, the rookie
Yeah,
parties were changing a lot after that. Like I remember my rookie party, it was pretty crazy, but then what happened to Kima Lu, like after that, everything just kind of got halted. But the culture's still there. You still have a lot of guys, bullying and hazing and trying to act cool and still making people drink. And it goes right from junior, right into the pros. And I think, the summertime is sometimes the hardest time to stay away from all that stuff. And unless you're surrounding yourself with the right group of people, like, yeah, I think a lot of people go through tough times as hockey players, and there's just so many people that don't realize that.
Yeah, it's actually surprises me, to be honest with you. Still, when I get a lot of messages, and it could be anybody, right? It can really happen to anybody. And more than me. My pro career was cut short, and you were always twice the player I ever was, Zach. But I mean, like, man, like, it's a grind, right? Like you say, 15 years. I mean, it's not just like, oh, it's a physical grind. It's an emotional, mental grind too, right? And it's hard. It's really, really difficult. And I don't think until you've lived it, you can really understand it. And a lot of my friends are like, what are you complaining about? You should, I can't believe you blew it, and blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, it's like, man, you don't know what I was going through, or you don't know what that experience was like. But to answer your question, Zach, like, the culture has definitely gotten better, because like you, I saw the same thing happen. I was in the league when that kind of stuff happened. There was another thing that happened in the OHL too. I forget who was involved. It might have been the guy. I'm not sure, but there was something, and they put a stop to it, basically. So I think it was my rookie year was one of the last years. So that would have been your 16-year-old year, I think, right? So it's it it's definitely gotten better, but yeah, you said it right. The bullying, the hazing, that kind of stuff. I just don't understand how we, as a team, don't understand that to be a better team, you actually should treat people like way better than that. You should treat everybody on the team equally, and everybody should be gelling so that everybody feels important, so that everybody shows up, so that never going to get no resentment, especially in hockey. There's always a couple bitter guys in the dressing room. I don't care what anybody says. There always is. Always, right? Always. I've been that guy, right? But there's always been, and that's just because we're competitive, right? As hockey players, and you want to play, and you want to be on the power play, or you want to be whatever, right? So, but why, I just think too, like, again, you go back to educating on just being better humans, being better teammates, and that can go a long ways in shifting the culture. And I was removed from it for a while, right? So I went to some other places. I was in the culture of homelessness for a year, the culture of jail for 3 years. And let me tell you, it's a lot different than the culture of hockey. The rules and the way that you think, and and I'm not saying that it was better or anything like that, because there was also it's just like, wow, that's crazy, and some of the codes and stuff, like, just wild. But now I kind of forget in there. I was going somewhere with that. This happens. Too many concussions in the middle of I'll do this in my podcast too, and I'll come to it. What was I saying there? Is anybody else listening?
I do that too all the time. You were saying going into, like, not saying that the culture was better than hockey, but when you were going,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, guys.
no,
Just
all good. I do the same thing. I'm like, what was I just saying? Or I'll walk into a room like, why did I come in here?
come in here, yeah. But being removed from the hockey culture for all those years, and now going back into it, and I coach, like, the pro guys that I'm around are all top-notch professional. Like, they're like pretty, like, they're like, honestly, I don't see any of that. Like, I don't see anything. Like, they're just so great. But when I go down and I'm around OHL, or like, man, these kids, some of the, like, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds these days, oh man, they all think they're Connor McDavid, and they can be really, really mean to each other, right? I get a lot of parents too that message me or email me, their kids getting picked on, and it can be really mean. And there's, at the time when you're that on that one side, you think it's just all fun and jokes and everything else, but you don't realize the harm that you're really doing somebody else. And, I'm not going to sit here and just play victim like in Swift Current. There's been times in my life where I was on the other side of it too. And I'm man enough to say that because, I don't know, I didn't treat rookies that great after I got treated. I'm like, why would I treat this guy any better? Like that was our mentality. It was just the way it was. It wasn't, and I think so when I got to Kelowna when I was 20, things had already sort of shifted. But I played with a guy named James McEwen, and he was tough as nails. Like, oh man, you want to see a good hockey fight? Go watch James McEwen and Garrett Hunt on YouTube. They have like 7, so you got to find the one with like I think it's got like over 1 million views. It is the best hockey fight I've ever seen, period. But anyways, great guy. He's doing some great stuff these days as well. We kind of just had a chat, and with the goalie Chris Westbrook, we're like, we had some really good young players. We had Tyson Barrie, Luke Shen was on the team, Jamie Benn was on the team, Brandon McMillan, Tyler Myers, and they were young kids, and we knew they were special and they were good. It was like let's treat these kids like good, like really be good to them. Like, why would we want to make their life a living hell? If they don't want to drink, don't make them drink. Like that's their choice. I'm not going to make it 16. By the time I was 20, I was more like, if he doesn't want to drink, don't drink. But at 19 in Swift Current, I remember putting hot sauce in, tequila and 151 mixed with whatever, and, probably dump it in a warm beer that was in the oven at 300 degrees, probably going to burn the rookie's lips off and say, you have to drink this. Right. And I wasn't like the only one doing it, but I can say that like, that's the stuff that I saw. That's sort of the stuff that I took part in, not knowing really how bad it was. It was like, this is what we do. This is the hockey culture. This is what I saw. So I'm going to do it. And it was just like this vicious circle that's been going on for how many years. And the problem is I think unless you've removed yourself from it, I don't really think you actually see kind of how bad some of it really is. Now, granted, a lot of some of the stuff in hockey is incredible. The people are incredible and there's so much good, but there is this other side. And I just think we could be better. And, it's conversations like this that are, I just hope that kids realize, like, if you really want to be, a great hockey player, because I think oftentimes that's all they're focused on. And I'm not 100% sure that that's the best thing either. As a dad now or whatever, I think it's just a long journey, but I believe somebody's got to make it. So if you're listening or watching this and you want to make it, you can do it. But I mean, it's just a really tough journey. So now I'm kind of gapping. Where are we going with, was there a question in there that I didn't answer? Man, I talk too much.
Oh, you're good, man. I mean, building off of that, since we're in draft week at the time of this recording. I mean, the NHL draft is going on in Nashville, which Nashville itself is an entirely different animal in terms of the partying and stuff. But what would your advice be to a lot of these kids that are both getting drafted and are going to be seeing, big paychecks next year or the year after that, the next few years, or even the kids that might not get drafted yet, moving forward in terms of mental health, or maybe they're struggling and nobody knows, or maybe whether it's addiction or trauma. What would you say to them in terms of their career moving forward?
Well, I think number one, for everybody, just like seriously, just try it. Number one, try to be a good person, right? Make the right decisions. Like be conscious that your decisions and your actions have consequences, either good or bad. And we've seen that a lot throughout the years, where you've seen any number of things. But I think it's an exciting time for a lot of young hockey players. It's dreams coming true and the start of a journey for a lot of them into long careers in the National Hockey League. And I mean, that comes with its whole other set of challenges and of course perks. And I never did that myself, so I don't fully understand that either, but I have a lot of friends that are in it and have done it and have in-depth conversations of some of the things that they kind of wish they would have known, you know, when they were younger. And I think that's hindsight's 2020. But you know, I would say have good mentors. You know, if you're the best player on the ice in your training group, or whatever, you're the leader in your group, I suggest that you find another group where you're not the leader, and be pushed to be uncomfortable, and be open to learning from, you know, some people who have been where you're trying to go, and find the good ones and stick with them, and figure out, you know, what they're doing, ask questions, and not just about hockey and training and about nutrition, but talk to them about money, and you know, try to see, you know, what, you know, how open they can be with some of the maybe mistakes they made with different investments or whatever. Like there's a lot of people come at you, you know, all of a sudden you have money, people want a piece of that there, wherever. And you know, to make sure that you have really good people, that you have in your corner. And certainly what goes with that is making sure that those people that are in your corner are people that you can be transparent with, vulnerable with, so that if something does come up, like say you get injured and you get prescribed some painkillers, and then all of a sudden something happens where you're taking too many and you feel like you can't tell anybody, so you're stuck trying to, you know, get off them on your own because you're too scared of the ramifications. Like, let me tell you, as someone who tried to do that, that's just one small example, but that is a very dark place to be in. So under any and all circumstances, you know, you should have a support network of people that you feel comfortable to chat with, because there's going to be challenges along the way, no doubt, and you can't do it on your own. So I think getting good mentors, that's something I wish I would have done a better job at, for sure. And to those players who weren't drafted or won't be drafted, depending on when they see this, you know, there's many routes to where you want to get to go, whether that be the NHL or somewhere else. I think, you know, resiliency builds character. And, you know, if that's something that you really want to accomplish, is playing in the NHL, well, and you're there and you feel like maybe you could have been drafted, maybe some of your friends could have been drafted, maybe, you know, realize that you're probably not that far off and that the dream doesn't die. You know, a lot of the players who will be drafted will not get contracts. A lot of them will, but a lot of them won't even get contracts, right? So at the end of the day, it's more of, to me, more of a PR marketing thing than anything. The draft, and it's a really cool experience, and I don't want to take away from that, because I would have loved to, you know, walk down that aisle and put that jersey on. Don't kid yourself. I would have, that's the dream. But if that doesn't happen for you, it's not the end of the world. And just to anybody else, you know, hockey players, you know, I've had a lot who, because I'm at that age, certainly guys that I played with and against, who are down their careers, and it's a really tough transition. And I've seen it so many times where, you know, they just feel kind of lost. And you know, the same path doesn't work for everybody, but you know, I would say, if you love hockey, stay connected to the game as much as possible. You can't replace playing. You just can't. But there are ways that you can still be involved, and two, maybe find a passion outside of hockey. If you're not playing anymore, maybe, I don't know, pick up the guitar or do something that you've always wanted to do that maybe, you know, maybe didn't have the time for. Explore other options as well. But it's important, again, to have that passion, that purpose, when we don't have to go to the rink every morning anymore, train in the off season because we got training camp coming up. I mean, the mind can wander, and the body will follow to some pretty dark places if you let it, and it can happen quick. Like, let me tell you, it can happen quick. I know a lot of couple pro guys who are homeless right now. You know, a couple on the downtown east side, just like I was. Another in my hometown, a guy that played in the NHL, and you know, nobody ever thinks that that's gonna be their life, and just, I don't know, if you're struggling, like, holy, you're not alone. I know what it feels like to feel alone and to be scared of what people will think of you, and maybe even how it'll affect your hockey career. But what I've found is, by actually being honest with myself and with other people, not only has it allowed me to be able to find out who I really am and accept that and be okay with it, but it's also allowed other people to come into my life. And by having that vulnerability, that transparency, that honesty, they can really be there to support me. And you really get to know people. And, I have really important relationships in my life that aren't superficial, where, I have people that I can lean on and count on. And I'll be honest, I'm not 100% on it. I still have days where I'm like, I'm not telling anybody what's going on with me today. I'm just in one. I want to feel, I'm just going to deal with this on my own. And, and I know it's not healthy, but again, I'm not the perfection of mental health or anything like that. I'm always trying to get better, but I'm just like anybody else who struggles. But it really is important to have those people to be there, but also you got to have people who will call you on your shit. Like you have to, like your real friends will call you out on things that you're doing that are not good for you. Real friends will not it'd be encouraging you to drink or to do drugs. Like that's facts. Like real friends are people that genuinely care about your well-being, and that includes your health. That includes your physical health, your mental health, your general well-being. And there's a lot of people in this world. You don't need to be loved and accepted by everybody, but you do, I believe, do need to have people in your life, not even a lot, but at least a handful anyways, or even a one minimum that can be there for you, that can lift you up when you need to be lifted up, call you out when you need to be called out, and keep you in check. I think that's sort of like the long version of that answer, like purpose, and then like the people you're choosing to hang out with. And that's huge for people retiring, so, and young players.
Yeah,
Be
I
ready.
wish
Be ready for.
there was more
Sorry,
resources
sorry.
for the smaller guys.
I
You see all the NHL guys, they get all the resources, they have all the money. You hear all the great stories of guys going to rehab and coming back and really bouncing back. Even Jim Montgomery, he had a bit of an alcohol problem, comes back and wins Coach of the Year. So it's like, we don't really have that in the WHL and the AHL and the East Coast League. Like when you're done playing in those pro leagues, your insurance is cut off, your resources for the most part are cut off. There's like a little bit here and there, but a lot of guys, need something like that to reach out to. Or if you don't have that, like you said, you need somebody that you can talk to about it, because you can't do it alone. But things that you're doing obviously is huge. You got an awesome podcast. People should tune into that. I'm sure you have a lot of other programs that people could check out, and do you have any advice that way?
Yeah, I think we're certainly building towards that for hockey players. That's always been the goal of Puck Support. Like it just became a clothing line, and it took off kind of. And I was like, oh man, like that, like oops, like how can I shut this down now? Like and I had to like create a different corporation because it was making over a certain amount of money. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, it's not doing that well. Like, it's doing well, but it's not like crazy or anything. But I mean, for tax laws and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, that's great. Like we're getting the positive message out, but we really are wanting to be, and we're registered for corporation for the clothing line, and then we're also registered non-for-profit, the Puck Support Network, which is under construction right now. We built the board of directors, and we're trying to really figure out where to start. And for me, and I don't have I don't know, 9 people on the board. So I don't get, I get my say. I'm not even on the board. I'm just a founder. I kind of get to say, but they can do whatever they want. We've kind of just been figuring out where we're gonna start, because we can't tackle it all at once. We're really small and we just want to do something. I think that is a big piece for why I started wanting to do something in the first place, was because I identified with exactly what you're talking about, is just that, like guys that didn't quite make it enough to have the resources of the substance abuse program and the alumni association, the NHLPA, all those things. And it's really sad because we've lost a lot. We've lost a lot of former junior like minor pro, if you will. I don't like really calling it that, but professional guys that that could have used that support, right? Like deeply used that support, and maybe they would still be here today. That's, that who knows, right? Not all of them. I'm not saying that there's a solution to fix this problem. It's not a blanket fixed problem, but we can make a significant impact. And that's sort of what we want to do. And so like that also involves partnering with other like-minded organizations and things like it has for me, like I realize there's so many competing brands and competing people and competing mindset coaches and life coaches and like recovery coaches and I'm like, wouldn't it just be nice if we could somehow really put all of our heads together on something and just put the egos aside and be like, okay, like there's a problem here. Let's come together. Like let's figure out how to fix this, right? And that's really what I try to do early on. But like I said, I didn't look very good. I didn't have the best track record, so I don't think too many people wanted to come to that table. But I think maybe it's changed now. And I have a video chat with the Western Hockey League tomorrow, doing some video stuff with them to hopefully get out to the players in the WHL and educate them and do stuff. So just super grateful for that opportunity. So I mean, there's I don't know. I just think people need to be more open-minded on this, and players, you don't have to uh, fit the mold of other guys on the team or anything. Like you can like make choices for yourself, and to be a hockey player at the elite level, you really have to make those decisions. And I know some guys have made through their careers with pretty severe addictions and struggle, but to be serious about it, I mean, you gotta be good, and it starts with your mental health. So if you feel like anything's wrong at any time, even if you're off just a little bit, there's no shame. There's no shame in picking up the phone and making a call. There are resources available. If you go to, I think if you go to pucksupport.com and soon pucksupport.org, there'll be some more resources there. And if anybody watching or listening to this, you are in that space, I would certainly love to hear from you and see kind of what your ideas are, because I have been I've had so many ideas, let's just say, one after the other for 3 years, and I really want to bring some of them to light, and that involves really getting out there more and educating. And again, not just me, not just my story. I'm just one guy. I'm just one story. The power lies when you can bring people together. And I really want to give other people the opportunity to get up and inspire and to be courageous and step out of their comfort zone and maybe share their story to help other people and to help themselves. And like, so there's just that conversation, right? I'm just continually trying to create that conversation. So my advice is, if you're feeling called to be a part of this solution moving forward, do what you can to put yourself in a position to be someone that is a true friend, that is a good person, that can show up for your friends, and is very conscious of the decisions that you make. Like really stop and think, how is this going to affect me? How is this going to affect my loved ones? That was something I didn't do, and I'm still really learning. I could talk on and on and on and on, but like there's just, we need to keep this conversation going. Like if you heard this conversation, you listen to this podcast, and carry this conversation on. Like tell somebody about it. If you're struggling, tell somebody about it. Reach out. You can find me on Instagram. I'm not always the greatest at getting back to messages because they come in quite hot these days. And it's a lot, I'll be honest. I love doing it, but sometimes I'm just a normal guy who struggles on the best of days as well. And I'm very grateful that people feel comfortable enough to share their story. And that's my goal, is to always do that, to make people feel comfortable enough to make that step, right? To make that step. So, what is that step? When you're ready, what is that step? I think that's the big question for people. And I think if we could somehow work together, everybody, and have not a million and one organizations competing for money and attention and publicity and everything else. And we just had like, you'd call 911 and there was like a mental health line. Like, you know, there's ambulance, police, fire, ambulance. Like there should be mental health. You know how many times I got to like called because I was having like breakdowns and the police come in with their guns drawn and I'm having like a mental health crisis, being taken away in handcuffs already. Like that's not, and that's kind of where we're at in this country. Like that's how a lot of it gets handled. So to have trained staff on hand to have situations like that and to just people know that they could go somewhere and not be judged. I mean, you go to the hospital, they lock you in a padded room. I've been there too. They take you here. They like it's just it's very intimidating and scary. And I think it keeps people from reaching out in the first place. So yeah, anyways.
Absolutely, man. I agree with that for sure. I feel like I could talk to you for hours on end about
Well,
all this stuff.
any anytime, anytime. And you know, if you guys ever want to together or either one of you ever want to come on my show, I'd love to have you guys on there and you know, if there's anything I can do to help support anything you guys have going on, I mean, I'm all in for that. And yeah, just feel super lucky to be able to even share this time with you guys. know,
Likewise,
it's
man. And if there's
it's
anything,
a gift to be able to do this.
definitely, man. And if there's anything we can do, or if
Thank you.
we can work together, maybe we do like a golf tournament or something, or something like that, or I don't know. We'd have to brainstorm some ideas, but I'm sure there's
Yeah,
possibilities for what we could do. And I mean, I'm proud of you for
yeah,
everything you've been able to accomplish, especially in the last few years. And you should be proud of yourself and everything that you've been able to do, and all the people that you've been able to help and speak to, and just for by sharing your story in general, you should be proud that you're able to do that and get that out there, because a lot of people are scared to share their stories, or they might feel like they're going to get judged, or that people might look at them the wrong way. But in reality, when if you have the courage to be able to speak out, you never know, it could help yourself, or you never know who else that it could help. So um it's an honor to have you on the show, man. And Zach, did you have anything else to add?
No, I just wanted to say thanks again for coming on. Obviously, a pretty powerful story that you have, and it's great to see you've turned everything around and hanging out in Muskoka. It must be nice to be
yeah,
out there skating with all those guys and showing them some stick handling moves. So it's great to have you on.
yeah. It's yeah. Thanks. And I just really get the whole story, and I kind of have this issue where I just go on tangents, and I'm trying to dial that in, but you
Oh,
just sometimes can't help it. It's raw. It's raw. It's authentic, and that's kind of how I am. I don't ever want to be like a robot and being the same every time. But you're one of our friends is one of the hockey players passed away. Mitch Fadden. Obviously, you were really close with Mitch when you played with him. That just I don't know. That one's still a really tough one for me, and we have to do better, right? And there's many others that were in the league just when we were playing that we've lost, certainly to overdose and a couple to suicide. But just yeah, I don't know. We do maybe meet up one year at the Mitch Fadden golf tournament. I've been talking to his mom and his brother quite a bit, and I really want to get out there and be a part of that for sure. And I would love to get you guys some puck support stuff and get Mitch's name in there for you, Zach. If you send me your address and stuff and your size, I'll get you a hat and a hoodie or something sent over there. And yeah, just greatly appreciate you guys having me on. And if you ever want to do this again, I'll go to the studio. I'll have better audio, and we can talk about anything else that you guys feel up to talking about. But like I said, thanks again. It means a lot to be here.
I would love to do a part two, because I mean, I think I didn't play hockey to the level that you guys did, but I worked in scouting for a lot of years in juniors. But my main thing, I work in the entertainment industry, right? So I mean, it's very very similar in terms of the party culture at times, you
Yeah.
know. So I would, I'd love to do a part two, and maybe we talk about the comparisons or the similarities between both, and it's
I love it. I love that idea. I absolutely love that idea. I love having conversations like that. And I just think there's so much value in having these conversations. I really do. And just lastly, to your point, I think you said you never really know who you're helping. And I've been seeing through my Instagram, I get a lot of messages. Hey, thank you for sharing your story, all the things. And I'm so appreciative of all the messages. But often what they say is like, one day I'm going to be able to inspire people like you. And I think, I always tell them, I'm like, well, you already are, because by writing this message, you just shared your story with me. A lot of them will write me and say, I've never told anybody this before, but XYZ, whatever. I've been sexually abused, I'm in addiction, I lost my kid to overdose, whatever it is. Like, a lot of messages like this. And people are like, one day I'm gonna have the courage to share my story. I'm gonna help people and whatever. And I think there's this common misconception, at least that I'm seeing, that you have to have a certain amount of followers or something to really inspire people. And that's so not even close to true. You don't even need to be on social media to inspire people. I think we're so lost, and I've been guilty of that too. It's just one person at a time, like in your community. It doesn't have to be online for people to see. Like, we can all inspire each other and we can all help each other. And we need to take back that kind of like ownership as humans, that we need to do a better job taking care of each other. I think we've lost that. I miss that from, like, it feels like when we were kids, at least when I was a kid, I feel like the disconnect in people is substantial. So I would love to chat more about, whatever, on another episode, if you guys are ever up for it.
absolutely, man. I am for sure.
Zach, if you ever come to Ontario, make sure you come to Muskoka and bring your hockey gear, man.
Yeah, I will for sure. I'd love to get out there.
All right. Yeah, it's a pretty awesome place, man. And they do probably one of the best concert venues ever. It's this old dance hall from the 1920s, and it's right over the lake. And it's just unreal live music place. They had Our Lady Peace there last summer, and Sam Roberts, and I don't know. I think I'm going to Default coming up. Yeah, it's just like but it's like right on the lake, and it's always lots of hockey players are there, and it's let's just say I would have probably had even, I don't want to say I would have had a better time. I just would have enjoyed it a little differently if it was 3 years ago. Let's just say it's a little bit too wild up there for my taste, but I love the live music. So but yeah, you got to come out. It's a beautiful spot. If anybody ever, a parent with a kid who plays hockey, we have tons of cool opportunities for hockey camps here in Muskoka, overnight stuff, day stuff. Like, it's pretty awesome, and I'm just just a small part of a pretty cool thing that's going on here. And yeah, just super grateful for it all, and for you guys, and looking forward to hopefully doing part two someday in the future.
Definitely, man. Us too. And thank you again for taking the time to come on and sharing your story and what you have going on. I think it's gonna help some people, whether it's whoever listens to a full episode or if they only see a clip. I think there's a lot of value in the discussion that we had, and these discussions in general, like you said. So thank you again, man. And we'll definitely do this again for sure.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.